Good evening, America, and welcome to the Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C. and the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. You know this is my favorite coffee. Wired to Fish is. It's also the official coffee of Just the News, and you can go right now to Wired2Fishcoffee.com and get a fantastic 10% discount just by using the promo code Just News. Go check it out. They support us. You should go support them. Great coffee, by the way. All right, Israel and Iran have been continuing their strikes against one another with the debate over the latest conflict in the Middle East spilling over into the Trump administration as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to thank President Trump for his American support. So far, the United States has helped the Israelis shoot down Iranian ballistic missiles, although a few have gotten through. One of our latest reports says that the death toll from the Iranian strikes has killed 13 in Israel and more than 400 in Iran. However, Netanyahu has been calling for more direct support from the United States, and in a recent interview with ABC News, this is how he summed up how he's approaching talks with the Trump administration. Take a listen.
It's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil. America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
The Prime Minister also rightfully pointed out that Iran has, and it's been proven in court, tried to assassinate President Trump before. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have a great story on Just News. I want you to go check it out. It's by my great colleague, Jerry Dunleavy. He is going to show all the different ways that Iran has tried to thwart the Trump presidencies going all the way back to 2015 and 16, assassination attempts, meddling in election, covert operations, and other things. Iran has feared Donald Trump because they know he won't allow the silly games that went on under Obama and Joe Biden. President Trump, speaking of that, is attending the G7 summit in Canada tonight, and he was asked about possible further military support for Israel. He declined to answer the question, telling reporters he didn't want to talk about it right now. The president has been very vocal about Iran never getting access to nuclear weapons, and he has still maintained that he's open to negotiating a deal on Iran's nuclear program. We'll have to wait and see if Iran will come to the table. Interesting development today, by the way, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, telling the Ayatollah Khomeini that he should quickly look for a way to re-engage in peace talks or risk extinction. Pretty strong words from the leader of Russia, who's been a longtime ally of Iran, though seemingly parting ways. All right, Amanda, we had some terrible shootings over the weekend, some assassinations that the country's still coming to grips with. Gentlemen been charged already in court today. Law enforcement did great work to get this guy manhunt, one of the largest manhunts in American history. But a reminder that we live in a tinder dry environment, and it just takes a couple sparks for some people to do the wrong thing.
Absolutely. So obviously we will wait for details to transpire about that. But how about this? President Trump posted on True Social yesterday evening that he is ordering ICE to deliver the biggest mass deportation program in history. He wrote this: "Our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. ICE officers are herewith ordered by notice of this truth to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history." So it sounds like the president is continuing to take care of a key campaign promise, right? Well, some in the media didn't think so, with former Meet the Press host Chuck Todd doing journalism the only way that he knows how and criticizing President Trump for this part of his ICE order. Here, I'll read it to you. He said the president wrote, "We must expand efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state." And because of that, Chuck Todd wrote on X that the president is, quote, "openly admitting that he's politicizing law enforcement. This will not help ICE's image because he's asking them to perform a political task, throw in the decision to shield the red states from law enforcement, and he's clearly hoping to provoke an angry response at a moment when we need a president to de-escalate. He does the opposite." And I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound like anything President Trump said there is provoking anything. And it seems to me that the places you'd go to deport illegal aliens is the places where they actually are. And as John mentioned, President Trump is in Canada today taking part in the annual G7 conference. And a lot of news came out of that, including the signed trade agreement between the United States and the United Kingdom. The president announced that with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just a little bit ago, and trade has been a major focus of the G7, as you might expect. So we're going to see what else comes out of that. What do you expect, John? More trade deals?
Yeah, I think we will. I think we'll see a trade deal, some form of trade deal with Canada, and I think India soon. Yeah. You know, I was watching these protests and the extraordinary insanity that these cities allow, and I keep wondering how many more times will American taxpayers foot the bill to rebuild the city because they allow lawlessness and hatred and spitefulness. And Portland, I was covering the Portland riots around midnight on Saturday night. They're throwing incendiary devices into a federal building. It's just
Destroying
insane.
their own cities. Yep.
Our first guest tonight, he's got
Can do something about it.
exactly the right solution. He's got the Safe Cities Act. Joining us right now from the great state of Wisconsin, where I spent a good part of my early journalism career, Congressman Tony Weed. Sir, good to have you on.
Thanks for having me on.
It's a great honor. A lot of people I've been talking about the last few days very excited by the Safe Cities Act, an effort to bring some common sense to federal spending, which is if you're going to be lawless in your city, we're apparently not going to use taxpayer dollars to do it anymore. Tell us about it.
Well, it's unfortunate that we have to propose legislation like this, but this is to codify the memorandum of President Trump. The Safe Cities Act, or the the Stop Anarchists from Endangering Cities Act, is something that I think we need to put into place in order to protect the cities, especially when we see cities like Los Angeles, where you have Governor Newsom, you have Mayor Bass, who are politicizing this and really pandering to the violent extremists. President Trump wants to restore law and order and de-escalate the situation down there and ultimately save the city. And this is an act that I'm getting a lot of momentum on right now. People want law and order. And, the governor and, the mayor need to, actually do what's right for the constituents and protect law and order. Basically, what this says is if you are an anarchist state and now all you're doing is pandering to these violent extremists, we're going to pull the federal funding from the local jurisdiction. If the Department of Justice deems you as anarchists, that's what we're going to do. This ought to be a deterrent in order to prevent things that are happening right now in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Great point.
Congressman, what I love about this is it saves money in two ways for belligerent leaders. It saves money on the front end, but also on the back end. Even if you have a blue city mayor like Karen Bass or a blue state governor like Gavin Newsom, they don't want their states or their city destroyed because in the case of Karen Bass, it hinders how people feel about LA, and for Gavin Newsom, the state of California as a whole, which hurts tourism and all sorts of other issues. So not having that safety blanket of the federal government helping to rebuild after the destruction, to me, is a great deterrent by those leaders to stop it in its tracks.
Well, exactly. I mean, all government right now, certainly at the federal level, at the state level and local, are concerned with revenue. I mean, we see it obviously from a federal perspective. We don't have money. We're continued to be deficit spending. Why not prevent these issues? Why not, bring on law and order ahead of time? And that's what President Trump is doing with, offering National Guard and even the Marines, is to de-escalate the situation, to prevent the looting. And we saw this in 2020. We even saw this in Kenosha in the great state of Wisconsin. Right. But fortunately, we had intervention from the National Guard that came in and prevented Kenosha from burning to the ground. And without that, that would have happened. That's why this is so important. Again, this is a deterrent. It will save money, no question about it. And it really just is a way to allow for the great people in law enforcement, the great men and women at the local areas, they want to do their job. They want to de-escalate and provide safety and security for the great people in their cities, towns, counties, and so forth. So, again, this is a great deterrent. It's great legislation. We're getting momentum. It codifies President Trump's memorandum. And again, that's what we need to do from a federal government perspective. When you have these radical ideas, these mayors and these governors that are, again, just pandering to violent extremists and playing politics rather than doing their job.
Yeah, keeping their people safe. That's all they should be focused on. So you hail from one of the great farming states in the world, the dairy state, as I love to call it when I was there. You had a great set of exchanges with the Ag Secretary last week at an oversight hearing. Two things I want to address. I think a lot of people don't understand this. There are lots of family farms that want to be passed on to the next generation, but the tax code makes it impossible to do so. And then I also like you to address, if you could, the recent revelations that China and their scientists were smuggling in dangerous pathogens that could wipe out American crops if they had ever been unleashed.
Well, yeah, this is a great state, Wisconsin. We are, America's dairy land. I happen to be in the 8th congressional district here in Wisconsin. We're the 4th largest congressional district. We make a lot of cheese. We're the cheese heads, of course. And it's very important that we encourage the next generation to get into farming. I've been out and about and meeting with farms from small all the way to larger dairy farms and other types of farms. And what's great to see, it's refreshing starting to see kind of that next generation that really want to do what mom and dad did. And have learned from grandma and grandpa. And, we need to continue to foster that, allow for them to be able to. A lot of these folks are, don't have, they call it kind of cash poor, but land rich perhaps. But they need to be able to pass this along to the next generation without taxing them again and again and again, and allow for and encourage that next generation to come in to the great agriculture business. And that's so important for our national security. Obviously, the economy, and here in Northeast Wisconsin, from an agriculture perspective. So we need to do everything we can to encourage that next generation. I love generational businesses, 2nd, 3rd, and even 4th generation. As it relates to, sort of that bioterror and the agriculture, we have an amazing president. So thankful for a strong leader and a great administration that is on top of these types of things, that, we're catching that, going to continue to deter that to make sure that we keep the food safe here in America.
Yeah, real important.
Wisconsin might officially be the dairy state, but in my opinion, fried cheese curds should be protected at all costs from the Chinese and whoever else wants to hurt our country.
I took her to Wisconsin last year. We got cheese curds. She understands now.
I ate my weight in cheese curds, and my weight has not recovered. Sir, before we let you go, I want to ask you about public appeal of the protests that took place this past weekend. But, I have no doubt that they are going to continue. They seem to have an industrialized complex around these No Kings protests, obviously with very sophisticated funding behind it. Do you anticipate that this is going to continue? Because the polling shows that it hasn't been hugely successful.
I think it will. Look, I think this is dark money. This is far left activists. We've seen it before. This is money that's coming in globally that, certainly supports the Democratic Party. And I think they may continue. I don't think they're gaining momentum right now, but it really is unfortunate. Everybody has the right to protest, and you should. We have a First Amendment, no question. But, once you get into kind of this, the violence and things like that we're seeing around the country, I don't think it's gaining momentum. And we're going to continue to do the great work that people elected us to do. As we know, President Trump was elected overwhelmingly. I ran on a very similar platform as him. But, we're going to continue to govern, do the right thing, and really just let's allow this country, the great people in this country, to take our economy to the next level, get out of their way, pull back the regulations, pull back the taxes, and let the great businesses, farmers, and all of that continue to grow. And that's what's so important. So.
Yeah, it is important, and there's a common sense path to get there now. You can see it playing out both in Congress and in the White House. Real quickly, sir, before we let you go, you mentioned dark money. We're seeing an awful lot of money that comes with connections to China and the Communist Party in China. Do you think Congress later this year might take a look at tightening up some of that foreign dark money that is clearly just interference in our political process?
Yeah, I think step one is educating. The more we can continue to educate, as the mainstream media will not touch it.
Yeah.
They continue to just go lockstep with this and act as if these things are legitimate. I think there needs to be something done about it, but I think ultimately we need to continue to have success. And I think having a great House of Representatives, Senate, and of course an amazing president continue to stack wins right now. We're doing great things with the big, beautiful bill. We had a great rescissions package last week. Yeah. Let's let this economy roar. Let's continue to allow people to be successful. And I think that in and of itself will also be a big help.
I have a sneaking suspicion the Safe Cities Act may be one of those victories that also gets rolled up pretty soon. It's such an important idea. So many Americans support it. Congressman, great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Great work. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. All right, folks, a quick commercial break around the corner. But first, when we come back, Israel and Iran's attacks continue, all while President Trump still looks to close a deal with the Iranian regime. What's next for the region? We'll talk to Colonel Rob Maness about that right after this quick break. Hey, folks, you know this. People spend up to half of their waking hours on their smartphones, and big tech reaps trillions from that time while users get nothing. Mode Mobile is flipping that script. Founded by Dan Novias, Mode Mobile created the Earn Phone, a smartphone that pays users simply for doing what they do already: reading, gaming, listening to music, and even charging their phones. It's part of a new digital equity model where users finally share in the value of their attention. 56% of Americans don't have $1,000 in savings, and 45% rely on side hustles just to make ends meet. Mode Mobile has already delivered over $325 million in earnings and savings to more than 50 million users worldwide, earning the title of the fastest growing company in software on Deloitte's 2023 list with $75 million in lifetime revenue. Big tech has monetized attention for decades. Mode Mobile is giving that power back to you, the people. They recently closed an oversubscribed $46+ million funding round and have already reserved their NASDAQ stock ticker, but private investors can still get in ahead of the public markets. This is a rare pre-IPO opportunity to invest in one of the world's largest untapped markets: personal screen time. Learn more at invest.modemobile.com/realamerica.
Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. Iran and Israel are still trading attacks, with some Iranian rockets making it through the Israeli Iron Dome, their missile defense shield, and Israel broadening its strikes from Iran's nuclear facilities to oil fields and other targets. So all of this comes as President Trump still tries to work out a nuclear deal with Iran. Is it possible, or will the United States be drawn into the fight as well? Joining us now to break it all down, United States Air Force veteran. He's also the host of The Rob Maness Show and the founder and chairman of Gator Pack, Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Very happy to have you. And, you know, Iran, it kind of seems like they don't have many friends left. Russia indicating that they're not really supporting them in this, and China has been strangely quiet. What do you make of all that?
Well, I think Iran's getting paid back for all the destabilization of the entire Middle East region that they've been doing for the last 50 years or so. You know what? It couldn't happen to a nicer country, now could it? Now, look, we are adamantly opposed to the killing of civilians in warfare. As a matter of fact, I personally think war should be an absolute last resort, but the Israeli intelligence and Israeli government had to make a decision when they got the information that looked like Iran was really close to mating a nuclear warhead to a delivery system, and they can't afford to let that go. So I'm not surprised at what's happening. I think it's good that they are being abandoned by their longtime allies, Russia and China, it appears. As you know, Russia depends on them for producing the Shahed drone missiles that they are using in the Ukraine war.
Yeah, no, it is remarkable. When I look at this, I see a much greater strategy than the media gives credit to President Trump. I suspect that behind the scenes there have been conversations with China and Russia. Let's keep our relationship front and center. Don't worry about the Iranians. And then two, sort of implicitly giving Israel the room to carry out the job without having to literally say, I'm getting into a war at this moment. Walk us through what elements you see are strategic decisions by the president.
Well, his first one was to not push back on Israel when the operation started. And honestly, I know he gave the Iranians 60 days, and on day 61, Israel started this operation, but I'm not so sure by his initial reaction that President Trump was aware the trigger was actually going to be pulled that particular day, but he knew it was coming. So he's had the opportunity to take a look at this and to continue to tell the Iranian leadership, even as they have been killed off by this exceptional Israeli air operation and ground force operation with limited special ops and Mossad forces that have been on the ground there. Even though that's happened, he continues to tell the Iranians publicly that there is still a deal to be had, but the time is running out on it. And he's going to continue, I believe, to let Israel go ahead and get this job finished. And I think you're going to see that the president of the United States is going to keep his promise to MAGA and not put Americans into another war using our offensive capability. But as you know, war is very unpredictable. And if they attack our forces at all in any way, you can expect that President Trump's going to obliterate whatever force they use.
Yeah. I think that's a fight Iran does not want to pick right now.
Disproportionate, I'm pretty sure, is going to be the name of the game there. Colonel, it seems like this is one of those times in history where Khomeini, the Ayatollah, is weaker than it has been in all of our lifetimes and possibly in the last 100 years. At the same time, on a parallel track, you have the Iranian people who seem to be more fed up than they have been in a very long time. Is this a really special moment in history where something can happen from within Iran?
The possibilities are higher than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. And since I've been involved with the Iranians, and I'll remind you, I got involved with the Iranians at 17 when I enlisted during the hostage crisis. And the Iranians have been trying to kill people like me ever since. So I think it's a very rare opportunity. It's the only opportunity I've seen that's realistic for the Iranian people, the Persians, to rise up and throw this oppressive theocracy government off. And return back to something more like a democracy or a parliamentarian democracy. But you know what? We need to help. They need to help from the groups that are outside the diaspora of Iranians that exist that are in exile need to come together. I implore them, and I've said this every time I've interviewed on this since June 12th, the diaspora needs to come together and work together to help those that are in the country now go ahead and rise up and throw this off. It's possible to do that, but it's impossible for the United States or Israel to put ground forces in there like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan and many, many other places where it's absolutely failed. That is not what's possible. So regime change, if the Iranian people rise up and do it, absolutely, and they can maintain their government. But if we want to go down the road of Iraq or Afghanistan, you'll get the same exact results. Probably even worse, because Iran is a much more highly populated country and has much more capability than any of those other two countries.
Yeah, that's a great warning, a very smart piece of advice. So I want to talk about Iran's surprising diminishment. I think they're more diminished than anyone expected. People always thought they had these massive air defense systems. It looks like Israel was able to destabilize most of those very quickly, neutralize most of those. How badly injured and how weak is Iran's military right now? And what is the end game? What do you think is the definition of victory for Netanyahu?
Well, Israel's Air Force is able to range the entire country almost unopposed. That tells you that they've achieved air dominance when their forces are over that country. Nothing's flying. They're shooting at drones with AK-47s. I've seen live video of that in the last 24 hours. They're not even using their anti-aircraft artillery guns anymore because a lot of those have been destroyed. And if they turn their radars on, they're being destroyed almost immediately. So that's what's happening there. I think the end state is once we can get confirmation of the facility at Fordow to be destroyed to the point where it can't be used again, that'll be where the end state comes from. And that's why the Israeli Air Force needs more time. They don't have the heavy penetrating weapons that the United States has with the B-2, and which is why a lot of the folks in Washington are trying to get the president to use our B-2s, which we don't have to do because the Israeli Air Force does have penetrating weapons. It's just going to take a little bit longer to get to the depth through the 90 meters of rock and tunneling that it would take otherwise, but you can still accomplish the same effect. And I think that's where the end state would be. Look, it would be nice, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said the other day, look, it looks like there may be able to be a regime change because of this, but I don't think that was a strategic objective of his. I know it's not of ours because of the hard lessons we've learned and the vast amounts of blood and treasure that have been spilled on these deserts in the last 25 to 30 years, especially. But I think that regime change, if it comes from internally and from the Iranian diaspora that's out here that could come together and work with those that are inside, that could happen, and that could keep the country together so that it's not completely devastated and leaving a vacuum that some other bad actors could come into.
Yeah. Very important.
Colonel, before we let you go, there is a subsect of MAGA who is very dubious of intelligence reports. They don't want any type of involvement in this whatsoever. Their main citation is weapons of mass destruction from Saddam Hussein, and they look back on that and say, well, we just don't trust the intelligence. But the United States isn't propping up Israel in the way that we are getting involved in a war. It's a defensive posture helping an ally. What types of conversations are you having with those people who don't want any type of involvement in this? Because, you know, if they do have nuclear weapons, they go after Israel first, but they go after us second.
Yeah. Look, I believe the majority of MAGA sees things two ways. They're staunch supporters of Israel, our one democratic ally in the region that's backed us up when we needed them to back us up. And number two, they are adamantly opposed to the United States of America getting into another protracted war in the Middle East at all, period. Not even the use of B-2 bombers to use our penetrating weapons. That's why you hear people like me talking from those two perspectives. Let's talk about the intelligence for a second. Look, do you blame them for not believing the intelligence when the Bush administration got really honorable Americans that people thought always told us the truth, like Colin Powell, to lie and put us in that position, and then look at the failures and all the death and destruction and years of wasted effort in Iraq, and Iraq that has Iranian militias that killed 3 American soldiers just last year, and we didn't even hardly respond at all in a meaningful way. So you can't blame them for that with the intelligence stuff. But here's what I'll say. I looked at and watched the North Korea nuclear weapons break out from both the inside in the Pentagon and in the media. And I can tell you that the Iranians have been enriching uranium. That's a fact. Yep. It's a known fact. They do have enough for more than 5 warheads. I estimate, based on what I saw, that they probably already have 5 to 10 warheads, but they're working on mating them appropriately with their best capability, which is missiles, to reach Israel. And that's what Israel's intelligence saw. But you know what? Our official intelligence still says that that's not happening. So there is a disagreement in the intelligence. But in my mind, based on what I experienced with the North Korea breakout and what I observed, I think the Israelis are probably more on the target on that intelligence than we are.
Yeah. Colonel Rob Maness, I know our audience loves getting your intake and input in all of this. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, after the break, the DOJ has charged the Minnesota assassin suspect, so we're going to have more on that after these messages.
Hey, folks, if you've been following the facts, not the spin, you know we're living through a pivotal moment in American history. In just the first 5 months of President Trump's return, we've seen measurable progress. Border security is tightening, deportations are up, woke and DEI policies are being dismantled, and our military is being restored to strength as a fighting machine. These are real actions, not talking points, but here's what the facts can also tell us. One man can't fix everything. Congress needs to get in line with the American people, and that's where you come in. Join AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, at amac.us/justnews for as little as $12 a year. You'll get their award-winning magazine, valuable discounts, and access to free resources, but more importantly, you'll be part of a movement committed to protecting the values that made this country great: faith, family, and of course, freedom. Don't just read the headlines, help shape them. Join me and become an AMAC member today by going to amac.us/justnews and stand with millions of informed Americans right now. Welcome back, America. Every time we bring on this next guest, I always feel like my resume is a little shoddy. I mean, he's a former FBI agent, a former Navy SEAL, and an Air Marshal. He's our good friend, Jonathan Gill. Jonathan, good to have you on.
Good to be with you. Hey, listen, our resumes are very, very good, but the biggest thing about all of our resumes is that we're never wrong. We're always right. I think that's the most important part of it.
I like that. I like that. It's a great honor to have you on. I want to start with something that I think a lot of people probably aren't thinking about. We're watching the war. We're praying for the people in Israel. We know there's a pretty intense war going on. Israel's starting to get the upper hand. But on our soil, the professional terrorists that have never really struck our soil very often, Hezbollah, they've had sleeper cells here. If you're the FBI, walk us through right now what you're probably doing and looking at to make sure that Iran doesn't try to surprise us on our own homeland.
Well, I don't know if they're doing this, but the first thing I would be doing is looking at these individuals who are at all these riots and all these protests, the stuff that's going on in the universities, and the people who are closely related to Hamas, because they're all over the place overtly, and they've convinced a lot of people to do their bidding when it comes to down talking the Israelis and Israel in general, attacking Jews, as we've seen here in the United States. And that's a very important thing, because if terrorism has evolved, it's not just simply about big attacks and causing fear in a society to get them to do what they want, but now they have mastered the art of using social media and these protests and riots to push out altruism for all these narcissists that have come out on the left and on the right as well, but people everywhere that because of social media, they think they know more than everybody else, and there's not a cause they won't pass up. So my fear is not just that there's sleeper cells in and around, but that they are inspiring many of these Americans that are not Muslim to go out and do these things. So the FBI is notoriously bad at thinking outside the box. If you ever watched the show Mindhunter and how they gave that guy so much abuse because of his out of the box thinking, that's really the way it is. And so the FBI needs to learn how to think outside the box and not just think regular. Yes, there's cells here. They've been allowed to come into the country. But if you're just looking for overt or covert Islamic terrorists, you may miss this whole other aspect of what they've shown that they're doing, not just here, but also in and around Israel. Greta Thunberg jumped on and went all the way across an ocean to get over there in support of Hamas. All that you see is exactly what I fear happening here. So they got to concentrate on that as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah, Jonathan, there are a number of organizations, Campus Reform is one of them, who publishes a list of universities and the dollars that they accept from organizations with very questionable ties to terrorism. So there's a provable tie between education and terrorism. With this pressure to revoke the visas of international students who are involved in these protests, does that help the effort? Does that make any dent in rooting out these sleeper cells?
I absolutely believe it does, because I was in an article recently on Fox quoted about saying that these visa overstays, for instance, are a national security threat. The guy that was in Colorado that threw Molotov cocktails and burnt eight or more people, that individual was a visa overstay. So the possibility of these sleeper cells being here because of immigration, for instance, shows you how important it is for all these agencies within the federal government and all the aspects in which they have to look at this problem to work together and hit it from different angles. I was listening to your last guest and the colonel and talking about Israel and Iran, and if you look at Israel, the way they have done this, they have systematically gone after and diminished Hamas. They went and diminished Hezbollah. Now they're going after Iraq, and with our assistance, they also diminished the Houthis. Right. But before that occurred, intelligence had to improve, and Israel definitely knows now how important the intelligence is. And I think that is another aspect of this that the federal government, along with the FBI, along with ICE and Homeland Security and all these agencies, they have lists of a lot of these people who have come over and then disappeared. They need to start working together to develop these potential attack cells and where those people came from. They can start forward thinking that. Doesn't mean you got to go out and charge these people, but there's nothing in the law that says you can at least start looking at names and saying this could possibly be something, and then start going and trying to make contact with those people.
9/11 reminded the world and educated Americans about the radical Islamist terrorism threat. It seems to me, Tay, one of the things you're warning about is sort of this radical far left threat potentially evolving into terrorism or lone wolf opportunities. Have we done enough thinking about that? And do you see an FBI in its transition to Kash Patel that's starting to focus on it?
That is a difficult thing, and I'll tell you why. Because the left owns the federal government. You know, President Trump may be in office, and the Republicans may hold the majority, but the reality is, all the people who run these agencies many of them are still leftists, and that's the problem. Is that Kash Patel and the rest of these agency leaders have jumped in and started running their agencies. They didn't jump in and pause and get rid of these people effectively. Some of them were transferred to other offices, but overall, they're still the senior executive service that runs our federal government. That is a problem, because when you look at who the left typically, who they identify with, I guess you could say, is the communist or the socialist. And when you look at historically, and I like to not use the word radical, I use the word fundamental Islam. So when you look at the fundamental Islam and you look at historically communism and socialism, you get what's called the Red-Green Alliance. And so wherever we see the left historically, we see is the potential for Islam to maneuver and to gain support. And I think this is something that the government should be looking at, because embedded in the left, like I was talking about with these riots and protests and things that are going on at schools, are numerous people that are wearing the Hamas headgear. Yeah. They're chanting the same types of stuff that they chant over in Hamas. Like, so we see that the leftists are incorporating these individuals, these tactics that they use over there, that they use in the first and second Intifada. Yep. They're actually doing that here. They just are now getting to a more violent aspect, which they had in the second Intifada in Israel. They're getting to that now on a much faster scale than they did over there. It took years for them to progress that way over in Israel. Here, they're progressing within months.
Yeah, a very dangerous and very troubling fusion. Jonathan, thank you for bringing that all to our attention. You're right on the money on that. Jonathan Gill, former FBI agent, former Navy SEAL, and Air Marshal. Good to have you on, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
You got it. Anytime, you guys.
Yeah, well, we love that. That's awesome. All right, folks, coming up, Obama-era IRS scandal officials are back in power, now in charge of ethics and tax enforcement. What's really going on inside the IRS? We're going to have that next, but after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. Remember way back during the President Obama administration time, his time in office, when that supposed scandal-free administration's IRS was caught targeting conservatives? Yeah, well, several officials tied to that scandal have quietly slid back into senior leadership positions within the federal government, according to findings from the American Accountability Foundation. Now, these individuals are now entrenched in critical divisions like ethics and tax enforcement. So joining us now to talk all about that is the president of the American Accountability Foundation, the group who put out that report exposing the IRS for left-wing bias, Tom Jones. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, I wish I could say that I don't expect the ghost of Lois Lerner past and that type of ideology to infect government even further. But these, I mean, it's entrenched. It's the bureaucracy, right?
Exactly. And look, this isn't an accident. I think what happened here was when we exposed the Lois Lerner scandal at the tax-exempt division within the IRS, these folks went underground. We thought we had won the war. We thought we had gotten rid of really this plague within the IRS. But what the IRS did is they said, hey guys, look, you just need to be quiet for a little while. You need to hold tight. You got to have a lower profile. But when you do, we will push you back up through the ranks and we'll put you in positions where you can do the same thing you've been doing for years. And that's exactly what happened. And our report details, and I'd love to talk about it, the different divisions in which the IRS has put the kind of the deputies from the Lois Lerner scandal. And they really put them in those positions so that they can use the power of the IRS to retaliate against conservatives.
Yeah. We always say election has consequences, but usually not for bureaucrats. They always seem to survive and outlast presidents and elections. It's remarkable. I want to talk about something that we worked on a long time ago, and that was the alliance between then Jack Smith, Justice Department prosecutor, and Lois Lerner. They were conspiring a lot of the ideas that became the Lois Lerner scandal, the conservative targeting scandal. And then 6-7 years ago, he's the guy they pull right out when they want to pursue Donald Trump. Does those in bureaucracy and those in the left, have they sort of road mapped out who their people are, and that's why they keep getting back into position?
Yeah, 100%. And look, we need to name names here. And really, the most important name we need to focus on is this woman named Holly Paz.
Okay.
She was the number 2 under Lois Lerner during the targeting scandal, and she kind of went underground. Where they put her is in kind of this bureaucraties division called large business and international. You're like, what the heck is that?
Right.
Well, what it is the part of the IRS that regulates pass-through entities. And anybody who knows anything about business in America, most businesses in America are these things called pass-throughs, where you have your business, it moves into your personal side, and that's where you pay taxes. Well, she has free reign to attack taxpayers that are using pass-through organizations, and that's going to give her the ability to say, look, if I want to get conservatives out of politics, I want to get them out of supporting conservative nonprofits, what I can do is I can just launch an enforcement action against them and drain hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars from them in compliance costs, and keep that money from going into the public policy ecosystem where it would go otherwise, where people would support ideas, investigations, oversight, and really kind of support the conservative movement. She's in a position where she can just do that day in, day out and abuse taxpayers.
And a lot of those pass-throughs are small businesses, right?
Yeah.
Those are small business owners, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's men and women who've been successful. They developed wonderful businesses, but they don't have the resources to just endlessly fight the IRS. So every dollar they drain from them is a dollar they don't get to put back into their community. They don't get to put back into conservative organizations. So yeah, it is really a full frontal attack on conservative small businesses.
Tom, I think Michael Falkender is acting IRS commissioner, right? As an acting commissioner, do you have the same abilities as the permanent IRS commissioner in that these people can be fired? Are they fireable?
Yeah, they are, but you don't really have the juice to do it. And that's why we're really excited about our report, because we lay out for Billy Long, who should be sworn in any day now as the new IRS commissioner, to go in and clean house. Look, he's got the confirmation from the U.S. Senate. Really, the American people said, this is the guy we want. He's been confirmed. And now he can go in and clean house and bring in really a cadre of folks who are aligned with the agenda that the people voted for in November, an agenda that says, look, the IRS should be there just to collect the right amount of taxes, but not to harass American citizens. So we're really hopeful that Billy Long, when he gets into office, really picks up the report and says, look, I need a new team here, because the team I have is a bunch of holdovers from the Obama administration who cut their teeth harassing American taxpayers.
It's just amazing. It's actually kind of mind-numbing. We're 5 months into the Trump presidency. There are lots of places that needed the same sort of makeover that you're talking about, the IRS, the FBI, the Homeland Security Department. Just give us you're a great student of this. You've been able to identify in the past. How is the Trump administration doing cleaning out things, and how much more work do they still have ahead?
Yeah, look, I think they're doing a great job. I think they're doing a much better job than they did during the first administration. But look, there's still more to do. There's 2 million federal employees, so there's a lot of things that they have to do. I think the lack of a commissioner at the IRS really has kept them from having kind of the same aggressive agenda that they've had at many other federal agencies. So look, I think they've done great. It's been very exciting work. It's been honestly better than I think most people expected, but there's still more work to do, because if you really want to kind of wrap your arms around this behemoth of the kind of the federal deep state, you need to change the leadership within the civilian civil service corps. And at the IRS, it starts with Holly Paz, Robert Choi. and Elizabeth Katzenberg, who are all holdovers from the targeting scandal in 2013.
Amazing.
Well, hopefully they are planning accordingly. Tom Jones, the president of the American Accountability Foundation, thanks so much for being with us tonight, and thank you for this report. Incredible work.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, some final thoughts from the two of us after this break. Welcome back, everybody. A few more items on the agenda before we go. John, you had something else that you wanted to add about the Minnesota shooter, Vance Bolger.
Yeah, just a little bit ago, they released these text messages between him and his family, and the 6-word message right after he had shot and killed the House Speaker, the former House Speaker, was, "Dad went to war tonight." Dad went to war tonight. That's what this mindset of this man was, or some other stuff, apologizing to his wife, realizing that their life was about to be destroyed from his actions that night. But a reminder, as Jonathan Gill was telling us at the beginning of the third segment, that this ideology, this sort of activation thing that's going on in America right now, we allowed hateful rhetoric to stick around for so long now, and that rhetoric has now built certain people up to take action. And I think it's a moment for all of us to realize that this is a much more dangerous situation than we've probably had in America in a very long time.
Yeah, you know, the unfortunate thing, though, is that you have a lot of folks on the left side of the aisle who are trying to spin this scenario as President Trump's fault, which only further inflames the situation.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, does anyone even take the left seriously? I mean, at the same time they're worried about this violence, they're out there perpetrating their violence. Saturday night, I'm sitting there working here, and I wrote a story on this, but these hateful protesters in Portland, Oregon, are literally firing incendiary devices, smoke bombs and fireworks, at the federal law enforcement officials in ICE. And that is, to me, that's not protesting. That is an attempt at murder. When you throw something that could kill someone or burn them to death, that is the sort of escalation that I think Jonathan was warning about.
Yeah. So we have these protests here in the United States. As you talked about, the violence has been allowed to fester such that it has turned into assassination and assault and murder and all sorts of property destruction. That doesn't fly in Egypt. In Egypt, you had 200 protesters there protesting.
Anti-Israel protesters, right?
Anti-Israel protesters, and Egypt said, no thanks, and dragged them out.
Yeah, listen, I think, you know, we all do support the right to protest. It's a part of the DNA of America. It's part of having a First Amendment. The second that protest crosses into the sort of violence that we see, you start hitting people, you start pushing guards like the senator did, Senator Padilla did. You've crossed the line, and there has to be a consequence for it. I am shocked that the Trump Justice Department hasn't taken action against Senator Padilla. What he did, if you and I did that, we went to an officer, started driving their body backwards, we would have been arrested that moment.
Absolutely.
It's a bad message. But what we have now is words have become action, and the action is very dangerous. And it is time for all of that. And I think that was Donald Trump's message today, which is, if these protesters think they're getting a little less resolve from all the aggravation, no, we're going to double down in their cities. Watch out. And I think that's the only way. You have to smack a bully in the face to get any results. And I think that's what Donald Trump ordered today with that new approach on the ice.
Absolutely. I mean, very, very strong wording used there. Before we move on to that, and then one other kind of fun topic I want to throw in. President Trump, the Trumps enter the mobile phone space with Trump Mobile.
How about that? You got Trump.
Are you going to sign up?
Not yet, but I just saw it today. But I think about
$47, I believe, for unlimited texting.
Number,
of course it is, yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to sign up. It's going to be very popular.
Yep, indeed. Okay, and then one more story that is not up there on our fun little script.
Yes.
There was a girl, I won't even call her a woman because it seems like she was just infantile, who sang the national anthem at the Dodgers game.
I saw it,
in Spanish.
Yeah.
Even though she was told by the organization
not to.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's a form of rebellion. I don't know. I've said this for a long time. I think people just want news when they go to news. They just want entertainment. They just want baseball when they go to a baseball game. The left can't stop injecting its ideology and its politics into all of our places where we just need to decompress and enjoy. And I think there will be an enormous backlash for her career. But it's just time. You know, comedy should be, instead of Jimmy Kimmel's daily rants about politics, comedy should just be funny. Entertainment should be entertainment. News should be about news. America's ready for that moment. And I think the next few months are going to unveil lots of opportunities to create that sort of an ecosystem and free Americans from some of the leftist insanity that gets imposed everywhere. I mean, you can't even go to the grocery store sometimes. I mean, I was at the grocery store just picking up a couple items Thursday night before I went on a trip. And you know, there's people outside shouting at each other over, you're wearing a Trump MAGA hat, like some guy there. Who cares? Just go shopping.
Live and let live. Go buy your popcorn, whatever.
You want to wear your Antifa hat, go wear it. I don't care, but stop picking on other people. It's insanity.
It is, and
intolerance too.
It's intolerance. That's what it is. And look, you're going to have these clashes between the left and the right, but I consistently hear people on the left, with respect to what happened in Minnesota,
Yeah.
throwing back, well, you have January 6th. Okay, fine, but that's literally the only thing you guys ever bring up. We have instance after instance after instance where your side has perpetrated something violent on the other side. So
On this show, every time we said it, it doesn't matter whether you were red or white, January 6th or a summer of love 2020, you hit a cop, you pay the time. I'm still waiting to see if the Trump administration has the courage to
Padilla.
charge Senator Padilla.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's all the time we have for tonight. We're going to see you back here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on Real America's Voice. Have a great night. Head over to Just the News.